Are 12-step programs really the only way to long-term successful good recovery? That's a question we get in our office like all the time. And it's a good question, which is why in this video we're going to explore many of the options that are out there as far as pathways to recovery, and we're going to look at the pros and cons of each of those options. Now, you may have even heard me say before that at Hope for Families, we are what I like to call non-denominational recovery, meaning we like all the pathways. We just want to help people find the pathway that fits for them best. Hey, if it gets you there, it gets you there, and we like it. That's my simple, straightforward answer to that question. But, of course, I do have a lot of thinking about the different methodologies out there right now. I do love that there are all these different pathways, but let's take a closer look at 12-step programs versus some of this sort of what I call like this newer school thinking, and let's see what each one of them brings to the table. So hey, if you're new to this channel, welcome to Put the Shovel Down. I'm Amber Hollingsworth, and this YouTube channel is designed to keep you 5 steps ahead of addiction at all times by helping you understand the science and psychology of the issue so that you can make strategic decisions and ultimately so you can get your life and your family back on track. You can get back to living the life that you actually want to live. Okay, so back to our topic about this old school versus new school recovery situation. So in my mind, when I think about it, when I really drill down into it, I think that there's a key philosophical difference going on with the different ways of thinking. And what it comes down to is old school recovery kind of centers around this idea that there's something wrong with you as a person that is either causing the addiction or triggering the addiction or something. And so in old school recovery, it's about fixing this inside thing. Newer school recovery is more focused on the addictiveness of the actual substance. It focuses on you put the chemical in and this is what happens. And honestly, I think I kind of believe both. So let's take a look at each of these ways of thinking because they are both bringing something very, very important to the table. Now, in a new school recovery, I'm going to include some different types of programs, but I'm also in that thinking including medication-assisted programs like Suboxone, buprenorphine, all that kind of stuff. So that is also included. But the focus of those new school recoveries is all about the chemical substance, the brain changes that occur, the thinking around those substances. In fact, there are lots of different YouTubers I follow, podcasts I listen to, and I like to listen to a lot of different perspectives because there is something to be gained from all of it. Right now, there are 3 YouTubers that I really like and follow, and each of these 3 different YouTubers have their different programs for stopping drinking, but they're all very similar. I'm going to tell you who they are. One is called Sober Leon. He's this guy, I think he's British, but he lives in Thailand. There's Annie Grace, who has a book out called This Naked Mind about how to stop drinking or how she did it. And I really like that. I highly recommend it. I'll put the link in the description. And there's this other guy out there you may have seen. He's pretty popular. And his channel, I think, is called The Stop Drinking Expert. All 3 of them seem to have this similarity in their process at helping someone stop drinking. And the similarity that I see is that they spend most of the time focused on the actual messages that you're believing about alcohol particularly. But really, you could apply this. You could watch their videos and apply it to other substances. But their focus is on alcohol. But they're looking at, trying to help you confront your irrational thoughts about, is alcohol really adding something into my life? Why do I think that I like alcohol? Why does everyone around me think alcohol is so great? It really, all 3 of them confront and help you see the truth behind what's going on with alcohol. And their process is all about not saying there's something wrong with me. It's not about saying I'm an alcoholic. It's about saying, why do I believe these things? Why do I keep going back to this substance thinking it's going to fix this thing or provide me with this benefit when it's really not? And everything that all three of those YouTubers say, I totally 100% believe. Now, I don't think that any of them are like therapists or anything like that, but they all are in recovery, and they all are saying something that is very true, and that's, if you put an addictive chemical in your body long enough, you become addicted. It's kind of like with cigarette smoking. You know, that's an addiction, but we don't tend to think, oh, like that person had this underlying condition and that's why they became addicted, although we do think that about alcohol and other drugs. So in that respect, as far as the biology of the matter, I really do think that is true. The hole that I see in that sort of new school thinking is that it doesn't address what you might think in old school thinking, these underlying conditions, which I don't even know if I would call underlying conditions, because it's not like you got to fix these things inside that were there that made you become addicted. We'll get to that in a minute. But more, there are these other problems that are created and exacerbated along the way as your addiction was developing, other than your thoughts around the substance. You see, with those three people that I named just a second ago, they're all sort of coming at the concept of when you start thinking about alcohol differently and you start really understanding that you don't like it, you're not going to miss it, you're just going to not want to drink anymore, which I kind of agree with. Absolutely think is true. It's kind of like the house of cards falls and you're like, I don't like that. It doesn't help me. I don't know why I was believing that the whole time anyways, because the truth of it is, like, that's not even true. So it kind of crumbles that house of cards pyramid of thinking, which then takes away your desire to want to drink, which, like I said, I absolutely agree with. But here's the thing. On this YouTube channel, we talk a super ton about the psychology behind addiction. And that's not just the psychology behind your thinking about the substance, because most of the content on this channel, most of you know, is about the thinking around the families, the manipulation, the self-pity, the resentment. You see, there are all these psychological processes that could have been there before, but even if they were there before, are now magnified into giant sort of monsters of their own as a person has developed an addiction. Because we all do this, but when we do things that we know inside of our heart is wrong, that we feel sort of guilty or shameful about, we start to justify and rationalize those decisions. We start to shape the environment in such a way that makes it okay for us to do what we're doing. We surround ourselves with people who tell us that's okay and that's normal. We split family against each other. We lie to ourselves, not just about the substance use, but about why we had to do it. And most of the time that involves a lot of victim thinking. Now, you may have had this before, I don't know, but I guarantee you, as you've developed an addiction, you have developed this sort of problematic thinking pattern, not just about the substance, but about your life. And that's the way you've made yourself feel okay about continuing to make bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. And just like the habit of drinking or drugs doesn't go away immediately, the habit of these thought processes don't go away immediately either. You see, in old school recovery, they might say, well, addicts think this way and alcoholics think that way. And I do think that there's some truth in that. Sometimes when I hear that, though, I feel like what the 12-step program is trying to say is like those were inherent things in the person, which I guess could have been, but I kind of think those characteristics, those addict or alcoholic qualities, character defects, or whatever you want to call them, if they weren't there, the process of the addiction created them. So what I like about this old school recovery process is not so much that I think you should buy into the fact that there's something wrong with you, you're inherently broken. Actually, I kind of think we're all inherently broken. I think that's our spiritual journey. It's just that if you have an addiction to drugs or alcohol, that's just the way you've been managing that broken feeling. So it's not so much that I think that you should sort of buy into this there's something wrong with me philosophy, but you need to understand that it doesn't necessarily mean something wrong with you, but there are some processes other than just about the substance that have gained momentum, and these are unhealthy thinking processes that, if you don't address, are very likely to lead you to relapse. Those thinking processes have to do with how you manage your emotions, how you manage your relationships. Do you tend to fall into victim thinking? Do you get angry and run over other people in the process? And in a lot of the new school recovery thinking philosophies, none of those things are addressed, because they're going from this different point of view that it's always just about the substance. I kind of think it's both. I kind of think that's the beginning and the other stuff is the fallout, but I think that the new school stuff doesn't necessarily address some of that fallout stuff as adequately as 12-step or older school type programs do. Now, they don't really point it out to you that way, so you don't even really realize that that's what you're doing necessarily when you're working these programs, but that's essentially what's happening. It's teaching you how to manage your emotions. It's teaching you how to make your relationships better. It's teaching you how to live with integrity. And it's sort of the byproducts of those old school recovery processes that help you become a better person. Not that you were a bad person, but your thinking probably got bad along the way somewhere, and help you live a life in a way that's going to make you like yourself better, which is ultimately going to make you need drugs and alcohol so much less. Now, do you have to work a 12-step program to get that? No, you don't. You can get that through counseling. You can get that through coaching or even life coaching, but you've got to do some more deep down work on the inside of who you are. It's not just about deciding that you were wrong about this chemical and you don't like it anymore and therefore you put it down. I do think that's part of the process. Love that. I think that that's more appealing to people in a lot of ways than some of this thought process that there's something wrong with me. Have you guys ever heard people say this? I've said it. I know I've heard many other people say it, but that's the saying that everyone can benefit from a 12-step program. I totally agree with that. Some of the biggest roadblocks to why people don't work 12-step programs is because they don't like the idea of labeling themselves addicts or alcoholics or saying that they're bad or corrupt type people. So there's such a stigma attached to that, even if it's just in their own mind, that they resist that, and so they're more likely to sort of buy into these newer school concepts. But there are some things that happen in that process, whether it's in a church program, a counseling program, treatment program, or 12-step program, that addresses some of these underneath things that some of these newer school programs just don't quite get to. And they may seem separate than addiction, but they're really not separate. It's all intertwined in there together. There are a lot of reasons why I like 12-step. I don't think it's the end-all be-all. I think that there's a lot of different ways to get there, but there are some core things and factors happening that are in place in the 12-step program, and if you'll watch this video next, it'll highlight for you exactly what those core functions are so that you can either get those through the 12-step process or through any other process. It's just important that you get them.